What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Bryce, and today I'm reading chapter 36 of the Parker Inheritance. Let's begin. Chapter 36. Candace didn't bother trying to go to sleep. That would have been impossible. While waiting for morning, she got her mother's phone and searched the web for any mention of Reginald Bradley. She couldn't find any information about him, which wasn't surprising. Why would anything exist if he ceased to? Finally, 6 o'clock came. Her hand shook as she punched in the number. It was probably still too early to call, but she asked for forgiveness later. "Hello?" Miss Jones said, yawning. "Anne, is something wrong?" "Hi, it's actually me, Candace. Sorry to be calling at this time in the morning. Is Brandon awake? I have something really important to show him. It'll only take a..." "Whoa, slow down there," Miss Jones said. "Unfortunately, Brandon can't come to the phone. He's on punishment for the next 2 days." "Oh, okay." It took her a second to process this, and then another few seconds to formulate a response. "So I can't talk to him at all? Not even for a quick minute?" I'll tell him that you called, sweetie. You can see him on Wednesday." Candace hung up. She wondered what Brandon had done to get grounded for so long. She returned to her room and stared at the picture of Reginald Bradley. Her confidence didn't waver. She was sure he and James Parker were the same person. But why had he become someone else? She assumed life was easier back then if you were white. You could go to any school or live in any neighborhood. She thought about how Tori slowed down when she drove, and how Mr. Rittenhauer had accused them of breaking into the school, all because of their skin tone. Life would have been like that for Reginald Bradley too, and probably much worse in the 50s, but not for James Parker. Candace cracked open one of the tennis books she checked out from the library. She kept thinking about Reginald Bradley at that secret tennis game that night. How had they played in the dark? Did they keep score and use all that confusing tennis terminology? And how did a simple tennis game lead to all those people being attacked and run out of Lambert? The house phone rang about 2 hours later. Candace ran back to the kitchen, hoping it was Brandon. "Hey, Candace," Tori said. "Want to come over?" "I thought Brandon, he's upstairs, and Mom just left. See you in a bit." As usual, the door was unlocked. "I'm in the kitchen," Tori yelled. Candace held her notebook and the yearbook tightly in her hands as she entered the room. Tori sat at the table with a bowl of lumpy oatmeal in front of her. She was reading the Weston game. "Pretty good so far," she said, shutting the book. "Here's the deal. I don't know what you have to tell my brother, but it has to be really important to call here at 6 in the morning, so in exchange for an additional month of car washing, I've agreed to serve as an intermediary between you two." Candace sat down and opened the yearbook. "I think I found James Parker." She flipped to the page and pointed to Reginald Bradley. "That's him." Tori turned the book to get a better look at it. "I thought Parker was white." "I think he was only pretending to be white." Just like Imitation of Life. That's an old movie Mom likes about a girl that passes for white. Tori tapped the photo. "Let's say you're right. Now what?" "We should call Ellie Farmer." "Ellie Farmer. I think she knows more than she's letting on." "I agree," Tori said. She slid her cell phone across the table. "Make the call." "What about Brandon?" "I don't want to do it without him." "I think he understands. This is a big deal, and you don't exactly have time to waste." Candace paged through her notebook until she found Mrs. Farmer's phone number. She picked up the phone and started the dial, then ended the call before completing the number. "I want to wait for him," Candace said, giving the phone back to Tori. "He would do the same for me." Tori rolled her eyes as she rose from the table. "Hold on, I'll be back in a second." Candace heard the familiar sound of creaking wood as Tori ran upstairs. She returned with Brandon in tow. He smiled at Candace and offered her a slight wave but didn't speak. Tori handed the phone to Candace again. Brandon's only down here to listen to the conversation. He's not supposed to talk at all. And the second we hear Granddad's car turn into the yard, he hightails it back to his room. Candace searched Brandon's face, hoping to see a hint of she didn't know. Maybe she was looking for a clue as to why he had been grounded, or how he felt about returning to Atlanta, or how he felt, period. Brandon held her gaze for a few seconds, giving off no information, then sat down. Candace quickly dialed the number. She turned on the speakerphone so they could all hear. Mr. Farmer answered, then passed the phone to his wife. "Hey, Candace," Ellie Farmer said. "How are you doing, dear?" "I'm good. We're all good." Candace took a shaky breath. "I was hoping to ask a few questions about one of the students at Perkins, Reginald Bradley." "Oh, Reggie Bradley, you say?" Candace could hear the change in the woman's voice. She was certainly more guarded. "What do you want to know about him? Did he disappear? But not die, like maybe he became someone else?" There was a long pause. "What makes you ask that?" Ellie said. Candace looked at Brandon. Both his eyebrows were raised. We think that maybe, well, we aren't for sure." "I ain't getting any younger," she said. "If you figured it out, then say it." Brandon lurched forward. "He is James Parker, isn't he?" Tori snapped her fingers and shushed her brother. "Oh, hey, Brandon. Didn't know you were there." Ellie sighed. "Yes, you're right. Reggie Bradley is James Parker. I'm sorry I lied, but there are some secrets that aren't mine to share. But since you figured it out anyway, Reggie was the player who got beat up along with Coach Doug." Candace stared at the phone. She wished she were in front of Mrs. Farmer so she could see her face. "Coach Douglas told us that Reggie had found a job in Georgia," she continued, "and then a few months later we heard he died in an accident. We didn't think too much about Reggie after that. Life went on, you know. Life went on. Can't spend forever grieving for folks that are already gone." Not pause, bars. "And he never came back home?" Candace asked. "Never saw his family again. Were his friends?" "Not as far as I can tell," Ellie said. "Coach Douglas would check in on Reggie's grandmother. We were all worried about her. An old woman living by herself. He'd cover a few of her bills on months she was about short. On months she was short. But Lizzie Bradley was a tough old bird. She outlived just about everybody else her age. She didn't have any family, so I started dropping by Mount Carmel to visit her. This was years ago, back in the early 80s, when they didn't have a dedicated building for the seniors." Ellie coughed, then paused to take a sip of something. Candace hoped it was water, but was pretty sure it was something sugary and caffeinated. "Okay, where was I?" Ellie asked. "Oh yeah, when Reggie's grandmother passed. Me and some others pitched in to take care of her funeral. Turned out it had already been paid for by an anonymous donor. I didn't think much about it. Time passed, and then one day I received a $10,000 check for each of my grands, specifically to help cover college. Didn't know where it came from. Whoever had written the checks had made them impossible to trace. Wasn't until even later that I pieced it all together, when all the fuss started about donations to the school and church and such. One look at a picture of James Parker, and I knew it was Reggie. It was the eyes. He always had funny eyes." "Did Siobhan ever learn who he really was?" Candace asked. "And did you know that they were a couple?" The line was quiet for a few seconds. I guess I might as well tell it all. Siobhan was never officially seeing anyone in high school, but she was sneaking around with someone. Though she never told me who. I had to be her alibi a few times. Always figured it was Coach Douglas's son, but it could have been Reggie. That would have made a lot more sense now that I think about it. She had a pretty fancy funeral as well. Why didn't you ever say anything? Tori asked. Candace was so busy staring at the phone and listening. She'd forgotten that Tori was beside her. You don't go off and start spilling secrets about somebody after they give you that much money. Plus, who was I gonna tell? Everybody he cared about was dead by then. She coughed into the phone. I didn't blame Reggie. He had a chance at a better life. Lord knows he's got dealt a bad hand. His mama was a floozy and an alcoholic. He never met his daddy. Didn't want anything to do with a black baby. That made Candace think of something. His father wasn't one of the Allens, was he? She asked, her stomach twisting at the thought. Oh Lord, no. That would have been even worse. His daddy lived somewhere in New York, I think. She coughed again, this time much harder than before. I'm sorry, my throat's not feeling so well. I need to get off this phone. But y'all call back tomorrow if you have any other questions. They said their goodbyes and hung up the phone. Okay, back upstairs, Tori said to her brother. Brandon's eyes practically bugged out of his head. Upstairs, his sister repeated. He huffed as he rose from the table, but before he left the room, he offered another small smile and waved to Candace. I'll let you know if Brandon has any worthwhile thoughts, Tori said once he left. She spun the phone around on the table. That's such an amazing story, and sad. Do you think he ever talked to Siobhan or his grandmother again? I hope so. I couldn't imagine not seeing my parents again, or my other family and friends. Believe me, there are plenty of jerk fathers out there who are just fine not seeing their families. She cut her eyes at Candace. Sorry for the snark. You and your dad are on much better terms than me and my biological. Yeah, maybe, Candace said, but he's hiding something from me. All my parents keep secrets from the kids. All parents keep secrets from the kids. Not all my parents, just all parents in general. That's what it said. She slowly spun her phone on the table again. What do you think he's hiding? He's seeing someone, Candace said. A woman named Danielle. Are you sure? I mean, how do you know? I overheard him and Mom talking about it. You could always ask him, give him a chance to explain everything. Candace eyed Tori. Do you know something that you're not telling me? Just some things I overheard as well, she said. You should talk to your dad, seriously. Sometimes we have to remind our parents that we understand how the world works. She checked the time. You should go. Granddad will be here soon. And I don't think he agreed with my liberal interpretation of Brandon's punishment. Candace grabbed the yearbook and rose from the table. What did Brandon do that was so bad to get himself grounded? Tori shook her head. Can you ask him on Wednesday? And that was chapter 36. So tomorrow we'll be reading chapter 37. And that's about it. Peace out.